Welcome back. Thanks for staying with us. This is The Lead. Former Health Minister Dr Zweli Mkhize was this week cleared of contravening the Member of Parliament's ethics code by the Parliamentary Joint Committee on Ethics and Persons' Interests in relation to the Digital Vibe scandal. Mkhize was being investigated by the committee on two parts of a complaint laid by DA MP Siviwe Gwerabu, one being that his son benefited from the Digital Vibes company contracted by the Department of Health for various services during the peak of the COVID-19 pandemic, and another of the same company paying for his electrical maintenance to his home. Mkhize was cleared despite the Special Investigating Unit finding on the matter. Just recently, the SIU got the green light to retrieve funds from the companies linked to Mkhize and Digital Vibes. For more reaction to this, we're joined by the DA's Parliamentary Caucus chairperson, Dr Anali Lorret. Very good morning to you. Thank you so much for your time. In a letter that came from the Joint Standing Committee, it spoke about how the former Health Minister, Dr Zweli Mkhize, did not breach the Code of Ethics, and then the complaint filed in the matter being accordingly closed. What's your reaction to that?
Well, firstly, I have to say, good morning. And then secondly, I am a member of the Ethics Committee, and therefore I am bound by the confidentiality clause for that committee. So I can only express myself in general terms. And it is perhaps important to note how the committee works, and that the Ethics Committee is focused mainly primarily on the members of Parliament. So if there are complaints, for example, of a family member, we cannot really express ourselves on that because it doesn't fall within our jurisdiction. But having said that, when we received the complaint, and as you said, it was submitted by the Honourable Siviwe Gwerabu, on face value, first of all, it does look as if there is a improper deal that went off, or a deal that came about, and that a member of Parliament benefited unduly. As the Ethics Committee, we then do an investigation assisted by the Registrar of the Ethics Committee to satisfy ourselves. And as I said, I can't give too much detail, but I can work on the details that you have given because that is in the public domain now. The committee itself could not find a direct benefit, given all the information that we had in terms of those two transactions, or two instances of where there was an electrical fault at the home and it was fixed by a private contractor. So it is very difficult. When you look at ethics as a committee, we have to also work within lines of ethical requirements and make our decisions based on that, giving people the opportunity to respond. So, yes, I think on the whole, one would have thought perhaps that this would be a case where Dr Mkhize did breach the code of conduct, but we have to look at the facts before us. And in this instance, we could not find the direct link to a direct benefit for the particular member. So that was more or less that. So I don't think, I think many people think that now Dr Mkhize has not been in breach in any way. I don't think that is what the committee found at all. It was just in relation to those two specific instances. So yes, that is where we are, and as a committee we interrogated it, we looked at all the documentation we had, and if we cannot find an absolute direct link, then we cannot say, well, there was a breach of the Code of Ethics.
This is the same matter that was uncovered by the SIU, which is now the subject of a Hawks investigation. Was the SIU report taken into consideration?
Yes, we worked with the SIU report. We, in fact, obtained additional information from them, such as email reports, banking accounts. So, yes, we did work with them.
Some criticism that came from your party, Siviwe Gwerabu, saying that with all of this and this outcome, which was seemingly unexpected gauging the response of the DA. She's asked why the former health minister still remains an MP, irrespective of this, but still following the previous findings by the SIU.
Yes, we can, limit ourselves, as I'm talking now as a member of the Ethics Committee, to the actual complaint lodged with the Ethics Committee. And as I said earlier, there's much more in the SIU report, and that is something that has to be dealt with. It is also something that has to be dealt with Dr. Mkhize's own party and the president. So at this point, in terms of the complaint lodged with the Ethics Committee, this was the outcome. And I think what's also important is that as members of the Ethics Committee, we try our best not to think along party lines, but in the interest of the Ethics Code of Parliament and upholding the ethics of Parliament. So there are many cases that we think, well, this is clearly a breach, where we find, but it isn't. Or there are cases where we find against a member guilty of a breach in one instance and in the second instance not. So I can understand the reaction to this, because it does, one had the impression that this is very clear. It's no issues regarding that. But when we looked at the specific documents and we had to determine whether there was a direct benefit to the member himself, we could not, on the papers in front of us, come to that conclusion.
The DA has spoken about a lack of alignment with the spirit of the ethics code. What does that speak to?
That is... Okay, I'm getting a bit of a... I've got my phone and the sound on the... Okay, is that better? Yeah.
Okay, please switch off your laptop, but yes, we can also hear the fallback. If you switch off your laptop, I think we'll be okay.
I think so, yeah. Let's do that. Right. I think this is an issue that we have to look at, and the ethics code is in a process that we are re-looking at, revisiting the whole ethics code, and to look at, because, things have changed since '94 in terms of the ethics and what's going on and happening, and we had state capture, the kinds of issues that the ethics committee has to deal with. So, yes, I agree that the spirit of the ethics code is not what it was. And we are increasingly dealing with matters that are much more aligned to what would be happening in a court. So I agree with that sentiment most definitely, that we will have to have a relook at what exactly does it mean in terms of ethics in a parliamentary, public office bearer's context. If you are a member of Parliament, what are those lines? So if you look at the ethics code that we have at present, it isn't very specific, and the committee has to satisfy itself. What has also happened in the latest or the past few years is that many of these cases are being taken on review to the courts. Not that that should deter the ethics committee from doing its work, but that is the kind of world we live in now. So, I think as an ethics committee, we will have to sit and rethink of what are the requirements of an ethical member of Parliament and what is the actual extent of what the ethics committee can and can't do and the ways in which we can do it.
Is the DA considering taking this matter to court? Because the outcome was really quite shocking, and the justification, because the former health minister's son is a married adult, he's now not a close member as defined in Parliament's Code of Conduct. It really seems unsavory.
Yes, I think you use the word unsavory, which is quite correct. I think the whole relationship in terms of Mkhize's and digital vibes is unsavory. But I doubt whether we will be taking it to court for review. I think we will probably leave that in the hands of the Hawks investigation and it being taken to court by them. by the NPA to investigate this further in terms of a criminal matter. And obviously, these matters can come again to the Ethics Committee in terms of specific findings made.
Do you think that the outcome would have perhaps been different had the focal point been on the contract and digital vibes and the links of some of those who may be implicated?
I think that would have perhaps, I think personally, and I'm now speaking from my own perspective and reading the SIU report, that is the issue. So what we received as a complaint were parts of that, two specific instances in terms of Dr. Mkhize's own electricity at home. But perhaps I think having a look at the actual awarding of the contract, that is a different matter altogether.
And what are some of the big concerns around this matter? And, I mean, you make mention of revising and coming together as a committee to look at the spirit of the code of ethics. But in terms of other challenges that remain, what are we looking at?
If you say challenges, in what respect do you mean that?
Well, I'm talking about the code of ethics and establishing, you know, what seemingly looked like an obvious yes or no, and the outcome came out very different.
Yeah, I think that is what we will have to look at what is the threshold at which the Ethics Committee can find someone in breach. So at this point, it has developed into, and I've been serving on the committee for more than 2 terms, it has developed into almost beyond reasonable doubt kind of situation where you have to satisfy yourself, whereas one could look at a threshold for when a person is found to be in breach of the code of ethics. And that, I think, will be one of the important discussions we will have to have.
Okay, thank you so much. Thanks for your time there. The DA's Parliamentary Caucus chairperson, Dr. Annelie Lotriet, speaking there to former Health Minister Zweli Mkhize being absolved from the Digital Vibes saga. We continue, of course, to bring you more news, keeping a close eye on the developments in KwaZulu-Natal with our rolling coverage there. Our reporters stationed in various parts of that province, bringing you the latest on the ground. Stay tuned.